Hello guys, welcome once more to another video on our YouTube channel. In this video, we are going to continue solving June 2024 Pure Maths with Mechanics/Statistics paper 2. We are going to be looking at question number 2. Alright, so for those of you guys who have not watched the solution to question 1 and maybe when solving by yourself you found difficulties, make sure you click on the video in the description of this video to watch the video solution to question number 1. I am also going to drop the link to that very question number 1 in the comment section. While watching the video, if you have find difficulties, make sure you comment your difficulties in the comment section. Without wasting much of your time, let us get started. Alright, so as a normal routine, what you do is that you have to pause the video, you solve the equation by yourself, then you play the video and follow the solution till the end to see if your solution and method are both correct. Alright, so question 2 was from the topic polynomials, alright, fully polynomials, and it was allocated for 8 marks. So the question reads, the polynomial f of x, where f of x is ax cubed minus x squared plus bx plus 6, has a factor x plus 2. Now f of x leaves a remainder of 10 when divided by x plus 1. Find a, the values of the constant a and b, the values of x for which f of x is equal to 0, and it is 8 marks. Alright, so guys, we are going to begin with the first part of the question, which is asking us to find the values of the constant a and b. Now, we are going to use the information that f of x has a factor of x plus 2 and f of x leaves a remainder of 10 when divided by x plus 1. Now, generally in polynomials, there are two important theorems you have to always remember. We call them the factor and the remainder theorem. They are very important, so I'm going to try to explain before we solve the question. So basically, if I take a polynomial f of x, okay, f of x, I'll just represent it with f, and I divide it by another polynomial g of x. I'm just going to represent it with g. Now the answer will always give me a quotient, we call it q of x, then plus a remainder, we call it r of x, then divided by the divisor g of x. So whenever you do what you call long division, all right, for example, if you want to do long division, let us say we take something like x plus 1. Let me just take a very easy polynomial, x plus 1, and I divide by x minus 1. All right, so what do? X divided by x is 1 times x is x, and 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. Now what do? We subtract. Here we have 0. 1 minus negative 1 is 2. Alright, so we cannot continue dividing again because the degree of the polynomial 2 here is 0, because 2 is the same as 2x raised to the power 0. And you cannot divide again because it will be kind of 2x to the power 0 over x is 2x to the power negative 1. You already have negative powers which don't define a polynomial again. Alright, so how then do you write x plus 1 divided by x minus 1? So for us to write x plus 1 divided by x minus 1, so I'm going to say x plus 1 divided by x minus 1. How do I write it? Okay, now this x plus 1 in the numerator is what we call the dividend. The x minus 1 in the denominator is what we call the divisor. Alright, now the answer we have here is what we call the quotient. Alright, the answer we have here is what we call the remainder after the division. Okay, so this is just going to give me the quotient, which is q, which is 1, then plus the remainder is 2, then we have to divide it by the divisor, which is x minus 1. So that is it. If I cross multiply with x minus 1, we are just going to realize that our x plus 1 will just be equal to, we are going to take x minus 1, alright, we take x minus 1, we multiply it with a quotient, which is just 1, I'm just going to write it, alright, we multiply with 1, then we add it to 2, which is the remainder, because once you multiply x minus 1 with 2 over x minus 1, the x minus 1 cancels and you're left with 2. So similarly, if I want to write this f of x in terms of cure and arrow and g, you just realize that our f will be equal to what? Will be equal to, we take the divisor g times the quotient cure plus the remainder. So that's a basic principle of long division. Now the factor and remainder theorem says that, first of all, when f of x is divided by, in fact, let's say if g of x here, our divisor, is a factor of our f of x, it means that the remainder after the long division is 0. That's a factor and remainder theorem. All right, and if the remainder is 0, it therefore means that our g of x is a factor of f of x, because the remainder after the division is 0. So this is basically what is happening when we do long division, and how we talk about the factor and the remainder theorem. So we are going to use this same idea to solve this question. So let me just clean everything. All right, so we are going to analyze this question in exactly the same way. Okay, because I don't want to assume that you know, that's why I'm taking it gradually. All right, so what do we have to do? F of x has a factor of x plus 2. Basically, from the previous explanation, what does it mean? It means that if I take f of x and I divide by x plus 2, the remainder is 0, because normally we have to have a quotient plus a remainder, okay, which is arrow of x. All right, then we need to divide it by the x plus 2, because that's our divisor. But we know that x plus 2 is a factor. So since x plus 2 is a factor, it means that this remainder is basically equal to 0. And 0 divided by x plus 2 is 0. That is why we just have f of x over x plus 2 to be equal to cure of x. We don't know what cure of x is. All right, we just call it cure of x. So from there, you realize that if x plus 2 is a factor of f of x, then f of negative 2 is equal to 0. Now let us try to prove that why f of negative 2 is actually equal to 0. Because I know actually you guys know this, all right, but let me show you how it came about. Okay, so we have that f of x divided by x plus 2 is equal to cure of x. We don't care to know what cure of x is. It is a quotient after when you do your long division. All right, so I'm just going to multiply both sides by x plus 2, and we have f of x to be equal to x plus 2 times cure of x. Now what is f of negative 2? F of negative 2 is negative 2 plus 2 times cure of negative 2. All right, but negative 2 plus 2 is 0, so we don't even need to know what cure of negative 2 is, because we are still going to multiply it by 0. Okay, so at the end of the day, our f of negative 2 will be equal to 0. So hope you're seeing the relationship between our general statement and the proof. So generally, x plus 2 being a factor, it means that f of negative 2 is 0. In fact, this 0 here is actually the remainder. All right, this negative 2 is a root of the equation f of x equal to 0, because if I say f of x equal to 0, once I replace x with negative 2, I'm seeing that f of negative 2 is actually 0. So x equal to negative 2 is a solution to the equation f of x equal to 0, and automatically x plus 2 becomes a factor of f of x. I hope you guys are getting it. All right, so having in mind that x plus 2 is a factor, so f of negative 2 is equal to 0, we just have to do substitution. F of negative 2 is equal to 0 if and only if we have a times negative 2 cubed minus negative 2 squared plus b times negative 2 plus 6 is equal to 0. Simplifying, we have here negative 8a minus 4, because minus 2 squared is 4, but the negative sign makes it to be negative 4. Then minus 2b plus 6 equal to 0. You realize that negative 4 plus 6 is basically positive 2. When it goes to the right hand side, it becomes negative 2. We can divide all through by negative 2, and this gives us 4a plus b equal to 1. So this is our first equation. Next information, f of x leaves a remainder of 10 when divided by x plus 1. Now we are also going to analyze it like we analyzed the previous case, but I know that by definition you guys are just going to know that f of -1 is equal to 10, but I love to analyze. All right, so let's go. Now f of x divided by x plus 1, we are going to have a new quotient. Maybe I can call it g of x plus what? The remainder, which is 10 divided by x plus 1. That is our divisor. This is just a rule I gave when I was writing. All right, so if you multiply both sides by x plus 1, what do we have? We have our f of x is equal to x plus 1 times g of x plus 10, which is our remainder. We now realize that if you look for f of -1, it gives us -1 plus 1 times g of -1 plus 10. We don't need to know what g of -1 is because we are certain that everything here becomes 0 because -1 plus 1 is 0. So at the end of the day, we clearly see that f of -1 is equal to 10, which is how you always conclude. Okay, so we are now going to use the fact that f of -1 is equal to 10 and solve and have a second equation in terms of a and b, then solve simultaneously with the first equation to get the values of the constants a and b. Alright, so having f of -10 to be equal to 0, having f of -1 to be equal to 0, what does this imply? A times -1 cubed minus -1 squared plus b times -1 plus 6 is equal to 10. Simplification, -a minus 1 minus b plus 6 equal to 10. Now 10 minus 6 is 4, and 4 plus 1, because 1 is going to the right hand side, is 5. So what do we have? We have -a minus b is equal to 5. We have two equations we have to solve simultaneously. We clearly see that when we add the two equations, your b disappears because you are going to have -b plus b. It vanishes to 0. So we are going to have -a plus 4a is 3a and 5 plus 1 is 6. With this, a will be equal to 2. Now from this equation, what is the value of b? Alright, b is equal to -7 because from here we realize that b is 1 minus 4a, and since a is equal to 2, b will be 1 minus 4 times 2, which is equal to -7. Actually, I had to display this one before this one where there was a clash, but anyways, I believe you have understood. So a is equal to 2 and b is equal to -7. So in conclusion, what is f of x? 2x cubed minus x squared minus 7x plus 6, after replacing a with 2 and b with -7. So we are done with the first part of question 2a. Alright, now the second part is saying that we need to find the values of x for which f of x is equal to 0. We have already had f of x from the previous question. Alright, so to easily solve f of x equal to 0, we are going to do what we call completely factorization of f of x. So we are going to factorize f of x completely, meaning we must express f of x as a product of its linear factors in their lowest form. Alright, we already know that x plus 2 is one of the factors of f of x. Alright, so to get the other factor, we either do long division or synthetic division. In this video, I prepared synthetic division, but I'm going to start with long division first. Okay, then when I do synthetic division, you realize that synthetic division is very short, and actually it is acceptable in the GCE, so you have to learn it. Alright, so let's do long division to get the other factors. So I'm going to write because I did not type. So I have 2x cubed minus x squared minus 7x plus 6. Now we need to divide it by x plus 2. Alright, because that's a factor, the remainder must be 0. Now let's start our division process. 2x cubed divided by x is 2x squared. So we have 2x squared here. Okay. Now 2x, that's supposed to be 2x squared, not 2x cubed. So we're going to have 2x squared there. 2x squared times x is 2x cubed. 2x squared times positive 2 is positive 4x squared. Okay, then we now have to subtract and then divide again. So let us subtract. We are going to have 0 here. Negative x squared minus 4x squared is negative 5x squared. Alright. Now there are no terms in x, so we just bring down negative 7x and then we bring down positive 6. We divide again. Negative 5x squared divided by x is just negative 5x. Then we multiply again. Negative 5x times x is negative 5x squared. Alright. Negative 5x times positive 2 is negative 10x. Alright. Then we have to subtract. Here we are going to have 0. Here we are going to have negative 7 minus negative 10 is just 3x. Then plus 6. But 3x plus 6, we can just factorize the 3. It's going to give us 3 into x plus 2. Then I'm just trying to make the process easier. So I can now take 3 into x plus 2 divided by x plus 2 will give us 3. Alright. And when we multiply, we are still going to have 3 into x plus 2. Then when we subtract, we have 0. Clearly showing that that is our remainder. Okay. So once we subtract, yes, we have 0. We have 0. Voila. So basically our f of x will be equal to the product of x plus 2, one of the factors, and 2x squared minus 5x plus 3 as the other factor. So this is actually the quotient that we're writing in the previous slide. So this is that our cure of x that we never knew what it was. Alright, so this is our cure of x. Then we now have to try to see if we can factorize cure of x again. So I believe we all have understood long division. But my purpose is not actually to do long division. I will show you a different method which is kind of a little bit shorter and it works in all cases, but there are some restrictions. Alright, but I think for pure mathematics, all the things given to you is always going to work, except for the fact that if the factor is already quadratic, there is another way to do it. But anyways, let me just wipe what is here and display that method to you so that you see how it works. So you can always use that method in paper 1 and paper 2, where you have realized that the factor given to you is linear, so that it's going to be easier for you to work with. In another video, I might show you how to do it if the factor is quadratic. Alright, so what do we do? The method is called synthetic division. So what I do is that I write down the coefficients of my x cubed, x squared, x, and a constant in descending order. So I write down the coefficients. So we have 2, we have negative 1, we have negative 7, and we have 6. Now if there was no term in maybe x, you must write the coefficient as 0. Alright. If there was no term in x squared, you also write the coefficient as 0. Now what do I write on this side? I have to solve x plus 2 to be 0, x equal to negative 2. I put x equal to negative 2. Now we always bring down the first coefficient. Alright, so we always bring down the first coefficient. Then we do a series of multiplication and addition. So what we're going to do is that we are going to be multiplying. Okay, we are going to be multiplying, then later we add. So what is 2 times negative 2? It is negative 4. Look at where I'm placing negative 4. What is now negative 1 plus negative 4? It is negative 5. What is negative 5 times negative 2? Like I said, we are taking what is here, multiplying with negative, with this guy here always. What is negative 5 times negative 2? It is 10. Look at where I'm placing 10. So what is negative 7 plus 10? It is positive 3. Now, what is 3 times negative 2? It is negative 6. What is 6 plus negative 6? It is 0. This is actually our remainder. Alright. Now, this gives us the coefficient of x squared, the coefficient of x, and a constant in the quotient. Remember that we are dividing a polynomial of degree 3 by a polynomial of degree 1. So the quotient must be a polynomial of degree 2. That is why this is the coefficient of x squared, the coefficient of x, and the constant. So basically, the quotient is going to be 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. So my f of x will be equal to x plus 2, which is the first factor, and the next factor is now the quotient, which is 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. Now we can now factorize 2x squared minus 5x plus 3. I believe you can factorize quadratics. If you have a problem with factorizing such quadratics, you tell me that in the comment section. I'm going to make a video on that. So if I want to solve the equation f of x equal to 0, we just have to equate now each of the factors to 0 and solve for x. So equating the first one to 0, x will give you -2. Equating the second one to 0, x will give you 3 on 2, which is 1.5. Equating the third one to 0, x is going to give you 1. So we are done with finding the values of x for which f of x is equal to 0. Thank you guys for watching. See you guys in the next video, where we are going to be tackling question number 3 of June 2024, Maths Paper 2 with mechanics and with statistics. Until then, stay blessed.